Hello everyone. In today's video, I bring you a story that will surprise you and touch you deeply. Let's meet Thaddeus Lawson, a 52-year-old firefighter who experienced something unbelievable. He didn't just face the flames, but also death, and returned with an astonishing revelation about life and what the beings of light showed him on the other side. Get ready to discover the secret that completely changed his perspective on our existence. Before we begin, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any content like this. Now, grab your attention and get ready for this incredible and transformative journey. My name is Thaddeus Lawson, but everyone knows me as Thad. I'm 52 years old and a firefighter in Clear Creek, a small and peaceful town that, despite its apparent calm, has been the scene of intense battles against the flames. Over the years, I've faced fires that threatened both the lives of strangers and loved ones. However, the most intense battle I've ever fought wasn't against fire, but within myself. Since I was young, I've always been drawn to the idea of helping others. I grew up admiring the courage and selflessness of firefighters, and it didn't take long for me to decide to follow that path. The adrenaline of running towards danger while others flee from it always fascinated me. But nothing could have prepared me for what was about to come. Clear Creek may seem like just another small town on the map, but to me, it's the home I chose to protect. Every street, every building, every familiar face, these have all become part of my daily mission. Over the years, I've seen this community face challenges and come together in moments of crisis. I've been part of these stories, sometimes as the protagonist, other times as a mere supporting character. My life as a firefighter has taught me a lot about the fragility of human existence. I've seen lives saved in seconds and others lost in the blink of an eye. Every call was a reminder of how quickly fate can change. But none of that prepared me for what I was about to experience. What I'm about to share isn't just about what happened in a hospital. It's about a journey that took me beyond the limits of human understanding. An experience that challenged everything I thought I knew about life and death. This is the story of how my existence, and the way I see the world, was completely transformed. Before this experience, I was a pragmatic man, focused on the tangible and the immediate. My faith was in my team, my training, and my ability to face danger. It's not that I was skeptical of spirituality, but it simply wasn't something that occupied much space in my mind. I was too busy saving lives and protecting property to contemplate the mysteries of the universe. But all of that changed on a night that began like so many others. An emergency call, a race against time, and then something that no amount of training could have prepared me for. It was the start of a journey that would take me to the borders between life and death and make me question everything I thought I knew about our existence. This is my story. The story of an ordinary man who had a glimpse of the extraordinary. It's a tale of transformation, of revelation, and above all, of a new understanding of what it truly means to be alive. It all started on an apparently ordinary night. I was in the middle of my shift at the fire station when the alarm went off. It was an emergency call, but not for a fire. An elderly woman had been found in critical condition in her apartment. Without hesitation, our team quickly mobilized. When we arrived at the scene, something in the air made me hesitate for a moment. It wasn't the familiar smell of smoke or the heat of flames. It was something different, something that made my instincts scream in alert. Still, I entered the apartment, determined to do my duty. The atmosphere inside the apartment was stifling, not from heat, but from something much more insidious, illness. The woman was unconscious in her bed, her breathing irregular and labored. I approached her, trying to assess her condition. It was at that moment that something extraordinary happened. As I leaned over her to check her vital signs, the woman exhaled deeply. It was as if all the air in her lungs was expelled at once, and I, caught off guard, inhaled involuntarily. Her warm, sickly breath filled my lungs, and I immediately felt that something was wrong. It wasn't just the stale air of a closed room. It was as if, in that moment, something else had been transmitted. I continued with the standard procedure, but a feeling of unease began to spread through my body. Initially, I attributed it to the tension of the moment and the oppressive atmosphere of the apartment. We helped transfer the woman to the ambulance and completed our mission. But that strange feeling didn't leave me. In the hours that followed, my condition began to deteriorate rapidly. Fever set in, accompanied by intense chills and a weakness that seemed to drain all my energy. My colleagues noticed my state and insisted that I seek medical attention. Reluctant to leave my post, I eventually gave in when I realized I could barely stand. The journey to the hospital is a blur in my memory. I remember flashes of lights, worried voices, and a growing sense that something very serious was happening to me. My body, which had faced so many challenges over the years, seemed to be betraying me. At the hospital, things quickly worsened. Doctors rushed around, speaking in terms I barely understood. Tests were done, medications were administered, but nothing seemed to work. My consciousness began to waver, and I felt like I was drifting away from reality. It was at that moment, lying in that hospital bed, that I began to realize this could be the end. I, who had always been on the side of saving lives, now found myself powerless, fighting for my own survival. The irony of the situation didn't escape me, even amid the fever and pain. As darkness began to envelop me, I had one last conscious thought. So this is how it ends. And it was in that moment, at the threshold between life and death, that my true journey began. A journey that would take me beyond the limits of what I believed possible and would forever change how I understood life, death, and everything in between. The moment I lost consciousness was unlike anything I had ever experienced before. 1 second I was there, struggling to breathe in the hospital bed, and the next, well, it's hard to describe exactly what happened. It was as if a switch had been flipped, but instead of total darkness, I was flooded with an intense light. Suddenly, I found myself floating above my own body. It was a surreal feeling, as if I were an external observer of a scene in which I should have been the protagonist. I saw the doctors and nurses moving frantically around my lifeless form. Their voices were muffled, as if coming from far away, but I could clearly see the concern on their faces. I tried to speak to them, to tell them I was okay, that somehow I was still there, but no sound came out, or rather, no sound they could hear. That's when I realized I was no longer bound to my physical body. The sensation was indescribable. There was no pain, no fear, no physical limitations that I was used to. It was as if all the worries and anxieties of earthly life had simply disappeared. I felt light, free, as if I could go anywhere or do anything. As I watched the scene below me, I began to notice something strange happening around me. The hospital room started to fade away, as if it were dissolving into a mist. The walls, the medical equipment, even the people all began to vanish. In place of that familiar reality, a new scene began to form. It was as if I were being transported to another place, another plane of existence. The space around me expanded infinitely, and I found myself floating in a vast cosmos. Stars, galaxies, and nebulas surrounded me on all sides. Colors I had never seen before danced before my eyes, creating patterns and shapes that defied understanding. Pulsating orbs of light passed by me, each one emitting an energy that I could feel, even without a physical body. Time seemed to have no meaning in this place. I can't say if I spent seconds or eternities floating in this cosmic space. All I knew was that I had never felt so at peace, so complete. That's when I realized I was no longer Thad, the firefighter from Clear Creek. I was something more, something greater. My consciousness expanded, and I began to feel a deep connection with everything around me. Every star, every particle of light seemed to be a part of me, and I was a part of them. The sense of euphoria that flooded me is impossible to describe in human words. It was as if all the joy, all the love, and all the understanding of the universe had been condensed into a single moment of pure ecstasy. For the first time, I felt like I was truly home. As I floated in that cosmic ocean, I began to realize that this journey was only just beginning. Something told me there was more to be revealed. more to be understood. And that's when I noticed I wasn't alone in this vastness. Other presences began to make themselves known, and I knew I was about to encounter something, or someone, that would change everything I thought I knew about existence. While I floated in that vast cosmic ocean, I realized I wasn't alone. 3 figures began to materialize before me. They were unlike anything I had ever seen or imagined. They didn't have a defined human form. They were more like silhouettes made of pure light, wrapped in ethereal hoods that seemed to be woven from the very stars. Despite their unusual appearance, I felt no fear. On the contrary, I was overwhelmed by a profound sense of familiarity and comfort. It was as if I had known them for a long time, like old friends I had forgotten, but who had always been present, silently guiding me throughout my life. These beings didn't speak with words, at least not in the way we're used to. Instead, their messages were transmitted directly to my consciousness, in a form of communication that transcended language. The first message I received was clear and impactful. "You're not done yet." I was intrigued and a bit confused by this statement. Not done with what? My life? My mission? Before I could formulate these questions, the beings began to show me visions. I saw flashes of my life, moments I had forgotten, decisions I had made, people I had helped. But I also saw future possibilities, paths I could still walk, lives I could still touch. As I absorbed these visions, I felt the presence of a 4th entity approaching. This one was different from the other 3, larger and even more impressive. It was as if it were made of pure energy, radiating a light so intense that, if I still had physical eyes, I would have had to look away. But in this state, I could look at it directly, feeling waves of love and wisdom emanating from it. This entity introduced itself as Orion. I don't know if this was truly its name or just a form my mind used to process its presence. Orion began to reveal truths about existence that I had never considered before. He showed me that life as we know it is only a small part of a much larger journey. Our existence on Earth, Orion explained, is like an elaborate game, a simulation designed for the growth and evolution of the soul. Everything we value so much, money, status, material possessions, are mere distractions, obstacles created to challenge us and help us grow. Orion made me see that every challenge we face, every difficulty we overcome, is actually an opportunity for learning and spiritual evolution. The people we meet, the relationships we form, even the conflicts we encounter, are all part of a greater plan for the development of our consciousness. One of the most impactful revelations was the understanding that we are not truly separate from each other or the universe. The individuality we experience on Earth is a necessary illusion for our learning, but in reality, we are all part of a single, interconnected consciousness. As I absorbed these truths, I felt my perspective on life expand exponentially. Everything I thought I knew, everything I valued, seemed so small and insignificant in the face of this new understanding. At the same time, I felt an immense responsibility. If all of this was true, what was my role in this grand cosmic plan? Orion, sensing my doubt, continued his revelations. He showed me that each of us has a unique purpose, a special mission that contributes to the collective development of all souls. My life as a firefighter, he explained, was no accident. It was part of my path, a way to learn important lessons about courage, sacrifice, and the value of life. But now, with this new understanding, my mission was about to evolve. Orion made me see that the knowledge I was receiving wasn't just for me. It was something I was meant to share with the world, somehow. "You are a beacon," said Orion, his voice reverberating through my consciousness. "Your light must guide others through the darkness of ignorance and fear." I was overwhelmed by the magnitude of this responsibility. How could I, a simple firefighter from a small town, fulfill such a grand mission? Once again, Orion sensed my thoughts. "Never underestimate the power of a single awakened soul," he told me. "Every act of love, every moment of understanding, Every gesture of compassion creates ripples that spread throughout the universe. At that moment, I felt a deep connection with all of existence. I saw how every choice we make, every interaction we have, contributes to the fabric of reality. I understood that there are no insignificant actions, that everything we do has an impact on the grand scheme of things. It was an overwhelming revelation and, at the same time, incredibly liberating. I realized that I didn't need to change the whole world at once. My mission was simply to live with this new awareness, sharing the light I had received through my daily actions and interactions with others. As I absorbed these truths, I felt a deep peace envelop me. It was as if all the pieces of the puzzle of existence had finally come together. For the first time, I saw clearly my place in the universe and understood the true meaning of my life. But then, something unexpected happened. Orion and the other beings of light began to move away. I felt a pull, as if something was calling me back. In a moment of panic, I realized what was happening. I was being sent back. The feeling of being pulled back into my physical body was as abrupt as my exit from it. One moment, I was floating in the cosmos, absorbing universal truths from Orion and the beings of light. The next, I felt a shock, like being struck by lightning. I opened my physical eyes, blinking against the harsh light of the hospital room. The sounds of the medical equipment, once distant, were now deafening. The smell of antiseptic filled my nostrils. Everything was too intense, as if my senses had been amplified 1,000 times. My first reaction was panic. I didn't want to return. The peace, the understanding, the sense of belonging I had experienced on the other side was so profound that the physical reality felt like a prison in comparison. I tried to hold on to the memories of my experience, fearing they would fade like a dream upon waking. Gradually, I calmed down. Orion's words echoed in my mind. "You still have a mission to fulfill." I began to understand that my return wasn't a punishment, but an opportunity, a chance to live with a new purpose, to share what I had learned. The doctors and nurses around me were ecstatic. To them, I had just come back from cardiac arrest. I heard words like miracle and unexplainable being murmured. But I knew that what had happened was beyond the understanding of conventional medical science. In the days that followed, as I recovered in the hospital, I struggled to reconcile my transcendental experience with the everyday reality. How could I return to my normal life after what I had witnessed? How could I explain to others something I could barely comprehend myself? It was during this time that I met Eliza Green. "Did you see something on the other side?" I hesitated for a moment, fearing I'd be judged as crazy or delirious. But something in Eliza's eyes encouraged me. I began to speak, the words flowing like a dammed river finally finding an outlet. I told her about the light, about the beings I met, about the truths Orion had revealed to me. To my surprise and relief, Eliza not only believed me but seemed to understand. She told me she had always been interested in spirituality and near-death experiences. Her words were a balm to my confused soul. "What you experienced is a gift," she told me, "but it's also a responsibility. Not everyone has the chance to see beyond the veil like you did." The conversations with Eliza became an anchor for me. She helped me process my experience and find ways to integrate what I had learned into my daily life. More than that, she showed me that I wasn't alone, that there were others who understood or were at least open to understanding. As my physical recovery progressed, I felt I was undergoing an even deeper internal transformation. The priorities that once seemed so important, work promotions, accumulating material goods, trivial everyday concerns, now seemed insignificant. I began to see every interaction, every moment, as an opportunity to spread the light I had received. A smile to a stranger, a kind word to a stressed colleague, a moment of patience in a frustrating situation. All these small actions took on new meaning for me. But I also faced challenges. There were times when physical reality felt oppressive, when I longed for the peace and clarity I had experienced on the other side. I fought the temptation to isolate myself, to withdraw from a world that now seemed so limited and illusory. It was a period of intense learning and adjustment. Slowly, I began to understand that my mission wasn't to escape this world, but rather to bring some of that light and understanding into my everyday reality. Each day brought new challenges and opportunities to apply what I had learned. As I prepared to leave the hospital and return to my normal life, I knew that nothing would be the same as before. I had fundamentally changed, and now I faced the challenge of living with one foot in two worlds, the physical and the spiritual. The path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in my life, I felt I had a true purpose. And that, more than anything else, gave me the strength to move forward. Leaving the hospital felt like being born again. The world I knew so well now seemed strange and new. The colors appeared more vibrant, the sounds sharper. Every breath, every heartbeat, was a reminder of the miracle of life that I now understood in a much deeper way. My first day back at work at the fire station was surreal. The familiar faces of my colleagues, the routines I knew so well, everything seemed both familiar and completely strange. I was the same Thad on the outside, but inside I was a completely different person. I tried to share a bit of my experience with my colleagues. Some listened with interest, others with barely disguised skepticism. "Hey, Thad," one of them joked, "did you bring any souvenirs from the other side?" The laughter that followed made me realize how difficult it would be to communicate what I had experienced. But I didn't let that discourage me. I remembered Orion's words about how every action, no matter how small, created ripples in the universe. I decided that if I couldn't convince others with words, I would influence them through my actions. I began to approach my work with a new perspective. Every emergency call, every rescue, became more than just saving lives or property. It was an opportunity to bring light to situations of darkness and fear. I spent more time comforting victims, offering words of encouragement, showing compassion beyond my professional duty. At home, my family noticed the change. My wife, Sarah, initially worried about my new self, gradually began to appreciate the more patient and caring man I had become. Our conversations deepened, touching on topics we had never discussed before. I started sharing fragments of my experience with her, and to my surprise, she was open and receptive. My children, Tommy and Lisa, also felt the difference. I began to spend more time with them, not just in quantity, but in quality. Every shared moment became an opportunity to teach deeper values, to show them the interconnectedness of all things. However, not everything was easy. There were days when the normalcy of everyday life felt suffocating. The materialism, the rush, the lack of awareness I saw around me sometimes left me frustrated and sad. In those moments, I remembered the peace and unity I had experienced and longed for it. It was during one of those difficult moments that I decided to start meditating. I recalled how Eliza had mentioned that meditation could help maintain a connection with what I had experienced. At first, it was challenging. My mind wandered, my body became restless. But I persevered, and gradually, I began to feel that connection with something greater again. Meditation became my refuge, a daily moment to reconnect with the truths I had learned. Sometimes, during these sessions, I caught glimpses of that cosmic light, flashes of understanding that renewed my purpose. Over time, I began to notice subtle changes around me. Colleagues who had once mocked my experience started to seek me out to talk about their own doubts and fears. Neighbors and friends commented on the aura of calm I seemed to emanate. Without realizing it, I was fulfilling the mission Orion had given me, to be a beacon of light for others. But not everything was smooth. There were moments of doubt, times when I wondered if it had all been just an elaborate dream created by a brain deprived of oxygen. In those moments, I clung to the memories of my experience, to the feeling of unconditional love I had felt, to the clarity with which I had seen the interconnectedness of all things. One of the hardest lessons was learning to live in the present. Before, I was always planning for the future or dwelling on the past. Now, I understood the importance of each moment. Every interaction, every breath, every heartbeat was precious and unique. Gradually, I found a balance between my new understanding and the reality of everyday life. I learned to see beauty in the small things, a stranger's smile, a bird's song, the warmth of the sun on my skin. Every experience, no matter how mundane it seemed, was an opportunity for growth and connection. As the months passed, I realized that my near-death experience hadn't been the end of a journey, but the beginning of another. A journey of integration, of bringing the light I had experienced to the world around me. It wasn't always easy, but it was deeply rewarding. And so, day by day, I continued my mission, not as a guru or a prophet, but as an ordinary man with an extraordinary understanding. A firefighter who had seen beyond the flames of physical existence, and now worked to ignite a light of understanding and compassion in every life he touched. As time passed, the challenges of living with my new understanding became increasingly apparent. It was as if I was constantly navigating between two worlds, the physical world with its demands and expectations, and the spiritual world I had glimpsed during my near-death experience. One of the biggest challenges was dealing with the judgment and skepticism of others. While some were receptive to my story, many viewed it with suspicion or even ridicule. Once, during a training session at the fire department, but they made me realize that not everyone was ready or willing to hear about experiences that challenged their worldview. I learned to be more selective about who I shared my story with, seeking out those who demonstrated a genuine openness. Another significant challenge was maintaining my new awareness amidst the pressures and distractions of daily life. There were days when I found myself slipping back into old patterns of thought and behavior. The stress of work, the bills to pay, the small frictions of daily life sometimes made me momentarily forget the profound truths I had learned. In those moments, I felt guilty and frustrated with myself. How could I forget something so profound and transformative? But over time, I learned to be kinder to myself. I understood that this journey of integration was a process, not a single event. Each forgetting was an opportunity to remember, to reconnect with that expanded awareness. One of the most challenging aspects was dealing with the suffering I saw around me. Now that I understood the interconnectedness of all things, the pain of others affected me much more deeply. Every emergency call, every tragic news story in the world, reverberated within me in a way that sometimes felt unbearable, about why bad things happen if we are all part of a greater and loving consciousness. It was during this crisis that Orion's words returned to me with newfound clarity. He had shown me that every experience, even the painful ones, was an opportunity for the soul's growth. I began to see that my heightened empathy wasn't a weakness but a strength. It allowed me to connect more deeply with those who were suffering, offering not only physical help, but also emotional and spiritual comfort. Another significant challenge was balancing my new spiritual understanding with the practical responsibilities of life. There were moments when I felt tempted to abandon everything, my job, my material possessions, in pursuit of a more elevated existence, but I remembered that my mission wasn't to escape the world, but to bring light into it. I learned to find the sacred in the everyday. I began to see my work as a firefighter, not just as a profession, but as a spiritual calling. Every rescue, every life saved, every moment of courage and compassion was a manifestation of that divine light I had experienced. At home, I turned mundane tasks into spiritual practices. Washing the dishes became an exercise in mindfulness. Tending to the garden became a way to connect with nature and the cycle of life. Every interaction with my family became an opportunity to express unconditional love. One of the greatest areas of growth I experienced was in my relationship with fear. Before my near-death experience, the fear of death and the unknown often influenced my decisions. Now, having experienced the continuity of consciousness beyond the physical body, that fear had significantly diminished. This didn't mean that I became reckless or lost my sense of self-preservation. On the contrary, My respect for life deepened. But now I could face dangerous situations at work with an inner calm that surprised my colleagues. This absence of fear allowed me to think more clearly in crisis situations and make wiser decisions. My relationship with time also changed drastically. Before, I was always rushing, always anxious about the future or dwelling on the past. Now, I had learned the value of living in the present. Every moment became precious, a unique opportunity for experience and growth. This new perspective on time led me to reassess my priorities. I began to dedicate more time to activities that nourished my soul: meditation, reading spiritual texts, walks in nature. I also started to value more the time spent with my loved ones, understanding that each interaction was a sacred opportunity for connection and love. One of the most rewarding aspects of my growth was seeing how my transformation positively affected the people around me. My wife commented that our relationship had deepened, that she felt more understood and loved. My children seemed more open and confident, responding to my calmer and more attentive presence. At work, I noticed that my colleagues began to seek me out not only for professional matters but also for personal advice. Without realizing it, I had become a kind of informal counselor, someone who offered a different perspective on life's problems. One of the most valuable lessons I learned during this period of challenges and growth was the importance of balance. Balance between the spiritual and the material, between contemplation and action, between taking care of myself and taking care of others. I understood that my journey wasn't about escaping the world, but about bringing more light and awareness to it. As I faced each challenge, each moment of doubt or difficulty, I felt myself growing. Every obstacle I overcame strengthened me, deepening my understanding and connection to that greater truth I had experienced. And so, day by day, I continued my journey. A journey of integration, of bringing heaven to earth, of living as a bridge between two worlds. It wasn't an easy path, but it was incredibly rewarding. Every challenge overcome, every moment of growth, reminded me of Orion's words, "You are a beacon." And I was determined to keep that light shining, no matter how dark the night might seem. As the months turned into years, I began to realize that my near-death experience wasn't just for me. Orion's words echoed in my mind, "Your light must guide others through the darkness of ignorance and fear." Gradually, I began to understand that sharing my experience and the insights I had gained was a crucial part of my journey. At first, I shared my story only with those closest to me, family, close friends, trusted colleagues. But as I became more comfortable with my new reality, I started to be more open about my experience. A significant opportunity arose when I was invited to give a talk at a local safety conference. Instead of focusing only on the technical aspects of my work as a firefighter, I decided to share how my near-death experience had changed my approach to safety and the value of life. To my surprise, the response was overwhelmingly positive. Many people came to speak with me afterward, sharing their own experiences of moments of crisis that had made them reevaluate their lives. I realized that by speaking openly about my journey, I was giving others permission to explore their own existential questions. Inspired by this response, I began seeking more opportunities to share my story. I started a blog, sharing reflections on life, death, and the meaning of existence. To my surprise, the blog gained followers not just locally, but from different parts of the world. One day, I received an email from a woman in Australia. She wrote that she was battling terminal cancer, and that my words about the continuity of consciousness beyond death had given her peace and courage to face her final days. I was deeply touched, realizing the impact that my experience could have on people I would never meet in person. At work, my new perspective began to influence how our team approached crisis situations. I began emphasizing not only the importance of saving lives and property, but also offering emotional and spiritual support to victims. We implemented debriefing sessions after particularly difficult calls. Many of them were struggling with persistent trauma and fear. I shared with them not only my near-death experience, but also how it had changed my perspective on life and death. I saw tears in the eyes of many as I spoke about the peace and love I had experienced on the other side. One woman told me afterward, "Your words gave me hope. For the first time since the fire, I'm not afraid to sleep at night." As my reputation grew, I began receiving invitations to speak in hospitals, nursing homes, and even prisons. In each place, I shared my story and the lessons I had learned. I spoke about the interconnectedness of all things, about how every act of love creates ripples in the universe, about how there are no insignificant actions when it comes to spreading light and love. In a maximum security prison, I had a particularly impactful experience. After sharing my story, a man convicted of murder approached me, tears streaming down his hardened face. "I always thought I was damned," he said, "but if what you say is true, if we really are all part of something greater, then maybe there's hope even for someone like me." These interactions made me realize the transformative power of hope and unconditional love. I began to see that by sharing my experience, I was offering people a new perspective on their own lives and struggles. However, not all reactions were positive. Occasionally, I faced skepticism and even hostility. Some accused me of being a fraud, while others argued that my experience was merely the result of a mind deprived of oxygen. These criticisms were hard to hear, but they taught me the importance of humility and compassion. I learned not to try to convince anyone of the truth of my experience. Instead, I focused on sharing the lessons I had learned and how they had improved my life. I found that when I spoke from the heart, even the most hardened skeptics often found something valuable in my words. One of the most rewarding experiences was when I began receiving invitations to speak in schools. Talking to young people about life, death, and the meaning of existence was challenging but incredibly fulfilling. Many teenagers struggling with issues of identity and purpose found comfort and inspiration in my story. I remember a young girl who came to speak with me after a talk at a high school. She confessed that she had considered suicide, but my words about the preciousness of every life and the interconnectedness of all things had changed her perspective. "You made me realize that my life has a purpose, even if I don't know what it is yet," she said. As I continued to share my story, I realized that I was fulfilling the mission Orion had given me. I was indeed being a beacon, guiding others through the darkness of fear and ignorance toward the light of understanding and compassion. However, I also understood that this mission wasn't about me. It wasn't about becoming famous or revered. It was about being a channel for something greater, about allowing the light I had experienced to flow through me and touch other lives. Over time, I began to encourage others to share their own stories of transformation and growth. I realized that each person has a unique light to share, and that by encouraging others to shine, we were creating a network of light that spread across the world. One of the deepest lessons I learned on this journey of sharing was the power of vulnerability. By opening my heart and sharing not just the moments of ecstasy from my experience, but also the struggles and doubts I faced afterward, I created a safe space for others to be equally vulnerable and authentic. This authenticity created deep and meaningful connections. People from all walks of life, from CEOs of large companies to homeless individuals, found something in my story that resonated with their own experiences and struggles. As I continued to share my light, I realized that I was receiving just as much as I was giving. Every person who touched my life with their own story of courage, hope, and transformation enriched my understanding and deepened my gratitude for the incredible journey that is life. And so, day by day, I continued to spread the message of love, connection, and purpose that I had received. Every talk and every blog post, every one-on-one conversation was an opportunity to light up the world a little more. And while I sometimes felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the task, I remembered Orion's words, "Never underestimate the power of a single awakened soul." I had been awakened to a greater truth, and now my mission was to help others awaken too, not so they would follow my words or blindly believe in my experience, but so they could find their own inner light and share it with the world. As the years passed and I continued my journey of sharing and growth, my understanding of life and death evolved in ways I could never have imagined before my near-death experience. Death, which had once been a taboo topic, a feared and avoided end, became for me a natural transition, a passage to another state of being. Not that I sought death or devalued earthly life. On the contrary, my appreciation for every moment of physical existence became much deeper. But the paralyzing fear of death, which so often prevents people from living fully, no longer had any power over me. I began to see life as a school, a training ground for the soul. Every challenge, every joy, every relationship became an opportunity for growth and learning. The difficulties that once made me bitter or resentful, I now saw as valuable lessons, opportunities to practice love, compassion, and forgiveness. One of the most profound reflections I had was on the nature of time. During my near-death experience, I experienced a reality where past, present into, and future seemed to coexist. Back in earthly life, I began to realize how our worries about the past and anxieties about the future often prevent us from fully living in the present. I learned to practice a form of mindfulness that went beyond simple attention to the present moment. It was a constant awareness of the eternity contained in every instant, of the connection of each moment to the whole of existence. This practice transformed my everyday experience, making every interaction, every breath, an opportunity to connect with the divine. My understanding of life's purpose also deepened. I realized that we are not here just to accumulate experiences or achievements, but to evolve spiritually, to expand our consciousness and our capacity to love. Every action, every choice, became an opportunity to align myself with this greater purpose. One of the most challenging but also most liberating lessons was the understanding that we are not just our bodies or our minds. We are consciousness, a spark of the divine temporarily incarnated in human form. This understanding helped me overcome many of the insecurities and self-imposed limitations that had previously held me back. At the same time, I gained a new respect for the physical body and the earthly experience. I understood that while we are not just our bodies, they are sacred vessels for our journey on this plane. I began to take better care of my physical health, seeing it as a way to honor the gift of life and maximize my ability to serve others. Another profound reflection was on the nature of reality. My experience showed me that what we perceive with our physical senses is only a fraction of the total reality. I began to see the material world as a kind of veil, a necessary illusion for our learning, but not the entirety of existence. This understanding led me to a new appreciation for both science and spirituality. I saw that far from being opposites, they were complementary paths to understanding reality. Science helps us understand the mechanisms of the physical world, while spirituality connects us with realities beyond the physical. One of the most impactful reflections was on the nature of love. The love I experienced during my near-death experience was unlike anything I had ever felt on earth. It was unconditional, all-encompassing, the very essence of existence. Back in earthly life, I strove to bring a little of that divine love into my daily interactions. I learned that love is not just a feeling, but a powerful force that can transform lives and realities. Every act of kindness, every kind word, every compassionate thought became a way to channel that divine love into the world. Reflecting on my journey, I realized that my near-death experience was not the end of a journey, but the beginning of another. It was as if I had been given a glimpse of a cosmic map, and now my mission was to navigate back home while helping others find their way. One of the deepest reflections I had was on the nature of consciousness. My experience showed me that consciousness is not confined to the brain or the physical body. It is something much greater, a fundamental force of the universe. I began to see every living being as a unique expression of this universal consciousness, each with its own role in the great cosmic drama. This understanding led me to a new appreciation for the diversity of life. Every person, every creature, every plant became precious in my eyes, a unique manifestation of the divine. The differences that once caused conflict and separation now seemed to me a beautiful expression of the universe's infinite creativity. I reflected a lot on the role of free will in our lives. I understood that while we are part of something much greater, we still have the freedom to choose how we live our lives, how we respond to the circumstances we face. Each choice, each decision, became a sacred opportunity to align myself with the flow of universal love or resist it. One of the most challenging reflections was about the nature of evil and suffering in the world. How could I reconcile the existence of evil with the reality of the divine love I had experienced? I came to understand that what we call evil is often the result of ignorance, fear, and separation. Our mission, then, is not to fight against evil but to spread light and love, helping to dissipate the darkness of ignorance. As I reflected on my journey, I realized that life is far richer, more complex, and more beautiful than I had ever imagined. It is a constant dance between the physical and the spiritual, the visible and the invisible, the known and the mystery. And we, as human beings, have the unique privilege of being bridges between these worlds, bringing a bit of heaven to earth in every act of love and compassion. Finally, I understood that death is not the end but a transition. It is not something to be feared but a passage to be embraced when the time comes. Until then, our mission is to live fully, love deeply, and grow continuously. These reflections are not the end of my journey, but a new beginning. Each day brings new insights, new challenges, and new opportunities for growth. And as I continue my journey, I am deeply grateful for the experience that opened my eyes to the true nature of reality and the sacred purpose of life. As I approach the end of this narrative, I realize there is no real end to this story. My near-death experience was a turning point, a catalyst for an ongoing transformation that continues to unfold day by day. Today, at 52 years old, I look back and see how every aspect of my life has been touched and transformed by that extraordinary experience. My work as a firefighter, which once was just a profession, has become a sacred calling. Every rescue, every life saved, is an opportunity to manifest that unconditional love I experienced on the other side. My relationship with my family has deepened in ways I could never have imagined. Sarah, my wife, has become not only my life partner, but a spiritual companion. Together, we explore the mysteries of existence, supporting each other in our individual and shared growth. My children, now young adults, have grown up with a unique understanding of life and death, of purpose and meaning. Seeing them navigate the world with compassion and awareness is one of the greatest joys of my life. My mission to share the light I received continues to evolve. In addition to the talks and the blog, I've started facilitating support groups for people who have gone through near-death experiences or other transformative spiritual experiences. These groups have become communities of healing and growth, where people can freely share their experiences without fear of judgment. I've also begun working with healthcare professionals, sharing insights on how to offer more holistic and compassionate care to patients, especially those facing terminal illnesses. Seeing doctors and nurses integrate a more spiritual understanding into their practice is incredibly rewarding. One of the most unexpected developments was the interest my story sparked in the scientific community. I was invited to participate in studies on near-death experiences, contributing to a broader understanding of these phenomena. It's exciting to see science beginning to explore realms traditionally considered the exclusive domain of spirituality. However, not everything has been easy. I continue to face challenges and moments of doubt. There are days when the density of the physical world feels overwhelming, when I long for the peace and clarity I experienced on the other side. In those moments, I turn to the practices I've developed over the years: meditation, connecting with nature, service to others, to reconnect with that greater truth. One of the most important lessons I've learned is the importance of balance. Balance between the spiritual and the mundane, between being and doing, between giving and receiving. I've learned that to be an effective channel of light, I also need to take care of myself, to nurture my own growth and well-being. Looking to the future, I don't know exactly what lies ahead, but I know that each day is an opportunity to live out the teachings I've received, to be a beacon of light in a world that often seems dark. Every interaction is a chance to spread a little more love, every challenge an opportunity to practice compassion and forgiveness. My near-death experience showed me that we are much more than our physical bodies, much more than our earthly identities. We are eternal beings on a journey of growth and evolution. This life, with all its joys and challenges, is just one chapter in a much larger story. As I continue my journey, I am deeply grateful for the opportunity to share my story. My hope is that it can serve as a reminder to others that there is more to life than what we see on the surface, that it can inspire others to explore their own spiritual depths, to live with more love and compassion, to embrace each moment as a sacred opportunity for growth and connection. And so, I conclude this narrative not with a period but with ellipses. Because the story continues, the journey continues, the growth continues. Each day is a new beginning, each moment an opportunity to awaken to the greater truth of who we are and why we are here. May we all continue to grow, to love, to evolve. May we all find our inner light and share it with the world. Because, in the end, that is what our journey is about. Remembering who we truly are and helping others to remember as well. And so, I move forward, grateful for every breath, every heartbeat, every moment in this incredible journey we call life. The mystery continues to unfold, and I continue to learn, to grow, and to love. This is my story, my testimony, my ongoing legacy, and it continues. If you enjoyed this beautiful spiritual testimony, leave a like, comment with your thoughts, subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to activate the notification bell so you can watch every new video and help us spread this message to as many people as possible. See you next time.